Okay, children, so as we said earlier, tonight is the yard site of Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk. He's sometimes known as the Noam Elimelech because he wrote a book called the Noam Elimelech. He's most famous for being together with his brother. They were called the Achim HaKadoshim, the Holy Brothers. Okay, him and Reb Zusha of Anipoli, his brother, were two tremendous tzaddikim children. They were very great. And children, generally, people didn't know how great they were. People thought, actually, that they were very simple people. And they thought, a couple of beggars walking around. And they used to dress like beggars. They used to pretend that they're very simple. They used to pretend that they don't know very much. But in reality...
They didn't want to be thingy. They didn't want to be a show-off.
Yeah, that, but also the whole avodah was a little bit like that. But in reality, children, their main avodah was that they wanted to go from village to village, from city to city, and to help out the poor communities there. And there's many stories. I mean, one of the funniest stories, which I'm not saying tonight, but you remember the one?
The toilet.
Yeah, the one where they get stuck in prison.
And then they
Right.
dance around the garbage.
Right. It's a long story. I'm not going to go into it now. But they get stuck in prison because they were with a bunch of rowdy, drunkard people in the hotel room, and they get pulled in. But we're not going to go into that story now. Tonight I want to tell us a story called the spilt soup. One day, Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk and his brother, Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli, it was a Friday, and they arrive in a very little village. I'm trying to draw the village here, like little houses. Get into it. And Kelly, when you're done with the light blue, I need it down. They arrive late on the Friday, just before Shabbos comes in, and they step into shul, into the little shtibel. And shtibel is like a little shul. And they arrive in shul, and everybody is embarrassed because the village happens to have been a tremendously poor village. Nobody had any extra food, and nobody wanted to feed guests. Now, Jewish people generally are always very kind and giving, and it wasn't that they didn't want to give, it was that they didn't have. And they didn't look like they were tzaddikim or anything. They looked like a pair of miserable vagabonds, like a couple of poor beggars. They didn't beg, they didn't ask for anything. They come to shul and they're sitting there. And though they weren't actually, I mean, maybe they were, but they didn't do any work or anything. But they're because they were busy learning Torah and traveling around. They also wanted to feel what it was like to suffer, so that they could understand the suffering of the Jews, darling. So they put themselves. No, it was their avodah. Today we don't do these things, but it was an avodah during the days of the Baal Shem Tov, darling. That certain tzaddikim would put themselves into galus. They would dafka go travel around like poor. I'm sure they did. But either way, listen to what happened. Be it as it may, they didn't have anything. And they sit in shul, and it's very embarrassing. And the poor rabbi, who was poorer than all the villages, all the people in the village, sees that one by one, everybody has left, and nobody has invited these two poor beggars. And
they weren't beggars.
No, they weren't really beggars, that's right. But feeling very bad, he kind of half-heartedly tells them, do you have anywhere to eat? And they shrug, and he says, okay, please come to my house. And when he arrives in his house with these two beggars, his wife makes no secret of the fact that she's really not very happy about having to share their meager portions of food with an extra two mouths. But there's no choice. So they come and they sit down, and the Rav joyfully makes kiddush, and they take a sip. It was Friday night, yes, it was Shabbos. And the only food they really have is some soup, chicken soup, very watered down chicken soup. And the wife needs to share. She comes and she gives Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk one bowl, and she gives another bowl to his brother, Yosef Anatoli. As he picks up Elimelech. As he picks up the bowl of soup, children, suddenly he goes flip, and the whole thing pops over and drenches a pure white tablecloth. And this woman, she can't take it. She says, I deprive my children from a little bit of chicken soup, and this clumsy oaf spilling it all over the table. And the husband calms her down. Please don't embarrass him, don't shame him. But if you looked at Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli's face, he looked like he was miles away. He wasn't even paying attention to what she was saying. And she goes back to the kitchen. She brings back a second bowl of soup, more watery. And again, he comes, he picks up his bowl of soup, Zusha of Anipoli, the brother of Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk. And he picks up the spoon, and as he comes to put, he's like staring at the bowl. Like, it's no brain surgery here. It's easy. But instead of being able to get soup from the bowl, he goes flop, and he touches the rim of the bowl, and the whole bowl, second time, spills all over. And again, she claps her hands in indignation and in frustration, and she says, what's wrong with this guy? Doesn't he see that we barely have anything to eat? And how can he be so clumsy and not pay attention how he's eating? Her husband did everything in his power to try to calm her. And he's, please, my dear wife, don't shame our guests. Shaming somebody is not a nice midah. Now, to be fair to them, children, they were all starving and they were all very hungry. But, yes, you're going to hear the story. Listen. And now the rabbi gives his own plate to Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli because there's nothing left. And the third bowl he's got, he's coming, and as if right on cue, he
spills it.
Right on cue, comes to reach to take, and as he's taking his soup, flip flop, bash, it spills all over the floor a third time. And the wife was beside herself. She couldn't believe it. She says, my husband deprives himself, gives his own bowl of soup to you, and you can't even drink it without spilling. There's no more left. What are you going to do? And suddenly Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli's brother, Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhansk, turns to her and he tells her, my dear Rebbitzin, if my brother spilt the soup, rest assured that there is a good reason for it. Meaning, there's a purpose, there's a reason. And somehow, his words calmed her. And they continued the meal with whichever little meager left bits and crumbs that they have. And they finish it. A few days later, children, on Motzei Shabbos or whenever, they found out shocking news. That actually, the pirates of that land, the pirates of that village, the pirates was like a small king, that he was going to decree a horrible decree on all the Jews. That there has to be a big pogrom. Pogrom, lo aleinu, lo aleinu, lo aleinu. Okay, so this meaning they have to expel all the Jews. They wanted to hurt the Jews, tell them they can't stay living there anymore, and take away their houses, and take away their stuff, take away everything, and they'd be penniless. I mean, they're already very poor, but really take away the roof over their head. Basically, they'll all be thrown out of the houses, and he won't let any Jews live in his town anymore, in his village.
Why?
Because he was an anti-Semite, children. And the Galach, he didn't like Jews. And the Galach, it's usually the Galach. And the Galach, not always, some Galachim could be good. It was many years ago. The Galach convinced the pirates that the right thing to do would be to expel all the Jews, to throw out all the Jews and not permit them to live in his village anymore. Now, children, as he comes to write the decree, they set out a decree. The pirates, the king, dips his quill into ink, because back then you had to dip a quill, right, a feather into ink. That's how you signed. And as he puts the first inkwell, all of a sudden, psht, it spills all over. And he says, the decree got all messed up. Bring me a new one. And the Galach says, don't worry, I'll bring a new one, don't worry. And they write a new one. And as he comes, they write up a new one. And as they write a new decree, again, the pirates hold the quill to the inkwell. And he usually knew to write very well. But for some peculiar reason, a second time, the ink spills all over. And the Galach says, no worries. I'll write it up a third time. But lo and behold, a third time, the exact same thing happens. And when the pirate sees this, he tells the Galach, he says, if 3 times the ink is spilt, must be that God in heaven doesn't want me to make such a decree. And he says, I am annulling the decree. I am not going to make this decree for the Jewish people. And what they figured out, children, that it happened the exact same time as Reb Zusha of Anipoli and Reb Elimelech of Lizhansk were in the house of the rabbi and spilt the soup 3 times over. That's children. There are many more stories. It says that at this point, even the Rebbetzin was happy that her spilt soup had something to do with saving the villages, and that it in fact saved the Jewish people. But children, tzaddikim, darling, the actions of tzaddikim. One more thing. On the day of a yahrzeit of a tzaddik, children, his neshama has an aliyas haneshama, and when we do things like light a yahrzeit licht or tell a story of his life or something, he's meilitz yosher for us. It means he sends brachos for us. We connect with him. And certainly somebody like Reb Zusha of Anipoli and Reb Elimelech, right, and Reb Elimelech of Lizhansk. And may zchutam yagen aleinu, may their zchut protect us and watch over us, and may there be always simchas lekol klal Israel. Sorry guys, thanks darlings. That's beautiful, darling.